This is AV SuperFriends Off the Rails, an almost regularly scheduled open discussion on audio and video in higher education. We'll sound off about our most brilliant ideas, our dumbest mistakes, and everything in between. And because this conversation will almost certainly go off the rails at some point, we'll end up covering just about everything else. And now, the AV SuperFriends. For March 29th, 2023, it's the AV SuperFriends Off the Rails. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday. Nope, it's Wednesday. Time for a Wednesday afternoon podcast adventure.
Actually, for a
recording
moment,
this Friday show on Wednesday.
I thought it was Friday.
It's not Friday. You have to come into work tomorrow, or you just stay. You could be a work from home person and just say you're working.
Yeah. Well.
So, my name is Chris Dector. I'm joined today by Jamie, Marc, Larry, and Justin. And on today's show, we're going to discuss big display technologies. We're also going to talk about digital signage and how that works on our campuses. But first, it's the AV news. And honestly, this news is more of a product announcement, and we don't cover these very often. But this is from one of our favorite products, so we had to bring this up because it was a bit of chatter amongst us this week. So this comes from AV Interactive, or I guess it's AV Magazine at avinteractive.com. Link is in the show notes. And the title is Owl Labs First, in quotes, with front of room and 360-degree pairing. And I guess they say first because I think Logitech announced this last year and it's still not shipping and other things. But the idea is you can take your 360 camera and put a standard camera bar or something at the front of the room, and they can work in concert. But cool. I know we all love to deploy owl cams in every one of our classrooms as a standard, but I don't know. What do you guys think on this?
Yeah,
that was my thought too. Perfect. End of show.
That's my honest opinion. I haven't found a use case where I have pre-existing technology where I'd be willing to risk it.
No risk it, no biscuit.
Yeah.
Just throw one in somewhere and see what happens.
Oh, people ask me about them all the time. And I said, if you have nothing and you only have your laptop, cool. Yeah, go for it. But I can't put it somewhere else.
I'm sure it's just like the regular owl cams. It's just going to show up on campus one day. You'll walk into a room and it'll just be there.
I don't know, Larry. See, here's the thing that's holding this up. That bar has to be screwed into a wall.
Mm-hmm. That's labor.
And who are they going to ask to do that labor for them because they can't figure it out?
Just set it on the floor.
AV people.
They can be placed on a credenza. It'll work. You'll just walk in. It'll be there. It'll be at the end of the table.
That's fine. It could be there.
Right next to the
suffer through it. We're not.
I guess maybe I'm super naive on this. Do people do a lot of just BYOD conference spaces out there? Is that we don't really do a lot of that?
So, here's the scenario where I find these. Yeah. First of all, IT here early on was recommending them, which caused all sorts of issues. Where it shows up is in a standard presentation classroom with an installed computer, like God intended. And the COVID response was, look, we bought an OwlCam and stuck it on the lectern and plugged it into the computer in the room. So it's not used in BYOD scenarios. What they're doing is adding these to existing spaces, which causes all sorts of audio issues.
Maybe I'm just lucky. People, they will ask, but I haven't come across them out in the wild flying around in our rooms. I just don't see them.
To be fair, I found 2 yesterday in classrooms, and they were back in the box.
They don't show up in classrooms. They show up in meeting rooms where we already have systems in place, like Chris is saying, but for whatever reason, they don't show up in classrooms.
Probably because we deployed all
those...
Like a Polycom, old rigmarole thing?
No, I mean, a conference room that we put Zoom in, maybe it has a codec, maybe it just has a TV on the wall, and they just set who knows? It's just, that's where we see it in conference rooms.
But I just had enough luck keeping them at bay and not letting, because people will ask me, like I said, that can we buy one of these? And I tell them, no, don't do that. But at least they come here first to be told, don't do it.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I've been able to kind of keep them at arm's length, and we did have one mysteriously show up, and then they sent it back when they found out that it took drivers and stuff. But I kind of feel like they're becoming the old Polycom conference phone where people just drag it in and plug it in and hope.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's somewhere, maybe it's a cultural thing in different enclaves around the country where
people use them here because they're easy to set up. Nobody cares what the experience is of the foreign participant when people use them because it's easy. It's like, just plug it in, it just works. But the people in the room aren't looking at it. They're looking at the display, and then they don't know.
That's usually the complaint I get is people have trouble hearing us. It's like, yes, they do. Because and I do want to say this at the outset. I don't have an issue with the Owl Cam and other 360 cameras like that as they exist now. I mean, I remember the concept. I have an issue with the implementation of them.
The marketing.
They are designed to be, well, I don't want to talk about that in a minute too. They are designed to be as easy as possible. They're designed to be as cheap as possible. So for $600, $700, $800, $900, whatever they are, as an all-in-one device, you just plug in and you get this stuff. But it means they're using generally lower quality, lower pickup microphones. Yeah. The camera is functionally a webcam with a fisheye lens on it. So, it's things like that. And they're doing some stuff in software to steer that around. That's fine. But they always end up in spaces that are not designed for them. And I still have a couple in storage here that were purchased during the great CARES buy everything you can of early 2020. And people will ask about it on occasion. And I have even given them to some departments. And I have deployed these. But it comes with, there are 3 requirements to find is this appropriate. 1, how many people in the room? Is it about 8 or 10 at most? Because if it's more than that, it's too big. 2, where the people are sitting, can they almost reach out and touch this thing? Because the marketing will say, oh, it's good for 12, 15, 20 feet. No, it's good for about 6 to 8 feet away from the actual microphone. And 3, to your earlier comment, Justin, is there any other stuff already in the room? Because if it is, it starts to fight with that. And so if you already have an older room system or you've got a basic presentation, if you have any of that, this thing will fight with it because it wants to be everything. It wants to be the microphone and the playback and everything, because that's how it does its own AC and whatnot. The other gripe I have is with their lack of any sort of enterprise-friendly networking capability, their lack of central management, and they're adding some of this stuff, but it's always like it's tacked on. It's like, I have to have a little, it has to be installed on the computer so it can talk to it, and then I can get to this over the network, or it has to be on Wi-Fi and it doesn't support any of the enterprise Wi-Fi security. So that sort of stuff is where the problem comes in. And though I will say, from the standpoint of the company themselves, if you look at their website, go to I think it's owllabs.com or whatever, you look at their marketing, and Justin, you brought something a minute ago, all of their photos are in appropriately sized conference rooms. What people do is they take it because it's easy and they drop it in their 40 by 40 classroom with 38 students, and they complain people on the remote can't hear them. Yeah,
and you see that with other technologies too. Like any of the USB insert, whatever thing you want to call it.
The all-in-wonders.
Yeah, people will just drag it because they just, well, it worked in my office, it's going to work in this classroom. And they're thinking about how easy it was to plug into their computer and make it function. And they're thinking, oh, well, that means it's going to work for me over here. Not being aware at all of the actual environment which is going to be used. And so,
easy and perceived inexpensive.
Yes. I got a stupid question here. So why would they want to pair the bar with the can thing? Like what? I mean, why don't they just sell the bar as a replacement, which is a much better solution? Like, what's the what are they solving for?
What's this experience? What's this create for me? What does it do?
What they're doing is, and you've seen other manufacturers start to do this. Hudley is doing it. A lot of these kind of UCC ones for the next. We've asked for a couple of years. Hey, we have VTC enabled our teaching spaces. What's next? And what's next is this sort of thing. Multiple devices doing, and they're going to say it's AI. It's not. Doing some sort of inter-device communication, something like that. Where, so Justin, to your point, you have the bar at the front of the room, which gives you that standard conference bar experience. But then you have the little Owl 360 on the table. If your voice is picked up as closer to that, it will switch to that camera because now I'm closer to Justin. Never mind the fact that you're looking at the display 12 feet away.
Stupid.
So I don't disagree. But now I get to look at your ear because you're looking down. So yeah, it's a very strange thing. The idea is the multiple cameras can work in concert to, in theory, pick the most appropriate view at the time.
Unless it's not just using the audio to determine this, but if it's doing some facial recognition, if you're looking at the monitor while you're speaking, it switches to the sound bar.
That would be a better use.
That would actually work.
That's fixing that problem, Larry. So maybe you should write that firmware for
whole thing about the Owl altogether. It's like it's getting a perspective that's not the perspective I want.
Yeah,
like that's, I get that you can do that and cool, clever. You're doing this quasi 360 thing, but that's not ever my preferred experience. So
it only works in the scenario where everybody, or let me rephrase, it works best in the scenario where everybody at the table is having a discussion with the 5 or 6 people at the table. I'm remote, so I see the camera that is always looking at the 5 or 6 different people. I feel like I'm kind of in the room because I have the face on view. Where it falls apart is if like, okay, and now we have a big screen up and we're looking over here, and now everyone sees me. Well, looking over that way, it doesn't quite follow through.
To our point, the picture in the link shows 4, maybe 5 people. I think the 5th one's cut off. Everybody's looking at the TV, and the video bar's there, so you can just throw the can away, right?
Yeah, in this particular photo, yes, the owl can.
Going back to a typical deployment of a collaboration
conference
room, right?
But it would get the mic
people.
It'd get the mic closer to those 4 to 6 people.
So the marketing here is spot on, but it's not at the same time.
So what I heard is, Chris, you're buying these everywhere exclusively for all of your conferences.
This is now the exclusive
solution
AV
of choice.
system. Okay. I am tearing out all my Crestron, Extron, QSys. It's all going. It'll all get replaced with this. Fantastic.
And you can say you're using AI. So you're right there. You're on the edge. I like
all our classrooms are now AI enabled.
Good for you.
So, all right. Any last thoughts on this? Like I said, we don't cover product announcements much, but this one was worth bringing up.
This might take longer, but what's that thing above the TV? Is that part of that? Like, what is
they
that
have
doing?
It's another one of their cameras.
So I have 3 things that I just need one thing for.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is their whiteboard camera. So like the other ones, there's other ones out there that can see a whiteboard.
But it's above a TV.
But it shifts the perspective in software.
They're just cramming shit into this article, aren't they?
Just know the problem they're solving for is you having too much in your pocket.
Money. Yeah, you too much money.
Yes. Justin, we've noticed you have more money available. We have a solution for that.
Actually,
what if I could
they're
sell
wrong.
You this thing? Would you want
I don't
this?
have more money available.
All right. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about some big display technologies.
Hey y'all, I've got this new show I got to tell you about. It's called AVSF Live. That's LIVE exclamation point. First off, all you need to do is go to avsf.live.live, not .com, not .net, but .live. Yes, it's a website, does work. We're going to try out this new live video thing. It's probably going to go over like a hair in a biscuit. You got to check it out. Come to the tweeters and look us up on LinkedIn to find out more information. We'll see y'all soon.
All right, so let's talk some big display technologies. And by big, we mean anything bigger than, I don't know what. What's a normal size display? 75, 85?
75.
Anything above that become big?
I'd say 85 or larger.
Yeah,
large.
I'd be in that boat.
So 85 large. Is in the big category?
No, that's like that's when I'm acknowledging it. Like outside of projection.
It's 86 inch?
What is it? I don't even know what you're talking about.
I was like 100?
Yeah,
anything bigger than 100?
No. What I'm saying is, where is something considered a normal, regular, we don't care display? It's just a
110 and below is regular.
You're saying like a direct view type of thing.
That's mass deployment.
Okay. To me, anyway, the answer and my answer is 85. Anything 85 and below is a normal display. Above 85, we're in big territory.
Okay.
So we'll go with that. Thanks for joining us.
How about if it's 21 by 9?
No.
Larry, get the hell out.
Larry's done.
Larry ruined the show.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you go bigger than 85, you have 3 options. There are some LCD single panels in the 98, 100, and 110. Mm-hmm. And I think there was up to a 150 at one point.
There's a bunch of stuff out there.
But for the most part, about 110 is as big as those get. And my understanding, it still has to do with the pane of glass on the front is the limiting factor on that. And the fact that thing now it's physically the size of a queen size mattress. So, that plus it weighs 350 million pounds.
When you need a pallet jack, it's big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Above that, you have the option of video walls, or you have LED displays, which are functionally video walls because they're made of smaller panels. Yeah. Or you have projection. So I guess that's the question. So if somebody says, and I know, Mark, you've got a couple of projects like this right now, but it's like in a standard classroom, we go projector because frankly, there is no more economical way to make a big image. Hey, projector, fancy lens, boop, as big an image as you want, assuming you got light control and all the rest. But once you get into a project where it's not like a standard, normal, everyday classroom,
well, I want to.
What are we doing here?
I want to back in a corner a little bit. Standard everyday classroom for a minute. How many people are sitting in this room? Like, give me a jumping off, because this is where I'm up against it, to be honest.
Somewhere between the 30 and 50.
Okay, so that's the sweet spot of like projection. But I'm just noticing that prices are coming down to a point where I'm taking a good hard look at these larger single SKU options. I'm like, man, that it's intriguing, right? And then now I do have these more performance driven spaces that do warrant large 165, 180 inch size displays. And I went from not having a need at all on our campus to over in the last 3 months, all of a sudden there's 4 projects all calling out for these giant, high resolution, high brightness direct view solutions. And we probably would never be having this conversation 2-3 years ago just because of the cost. But now it's a reality. Like you can start to think about this, and it's real money. I'm not saying it's cheap by any means. It's still pricey, but and I'm starting to think that, are we going to see that tipping point where we're going to start seeing this leak into some of these more normal prices? Now, Chris, you're waving fingers and stuff at me. So
I was waving fingers first, because I used to be in that same boat, and I drank the Kool-Aid.
You guys had the same boat?
We recently spoke at the Panasonic event, and one of the things they mentioned was, while you're out there looking at direct view, high brightness LEDs, look at how many of them have messed up pixels.
Sure.
And so I've taken notice, my whole trip back, I was purposely walking around trying to find, there's a ton of those out there. And if you didn't buy the spares when you bought the original panels, then it's not going to be the same. And even if you did, you got half your wall has, 15,000 hours on it. You throw this new one up there, it's going to be hard to match. So there's just, I'm starting to wonder about the long-term viability of these in spaces.
The one we've
just go take
installed
one off the billboard.
Yeah, the one we've installed, you can dim the new one down and kind of color match it. But again, it's, to your point, you're making it look used, right? So we haven't done any on our campus.
Well,
just
and
because
that was
we can't
something that
afford
was
them.
common with LCD video walls,
Oh,
they cook
Aged
at
out.
different temperatures. We have one on campus right now. All 4 panels still work, and they still work fine, but they have cooked at different temperatures. And if you put up a single image across all, I think there's 6 of them in this wall, it looks terrible. It looks like a checkerboard.
Yeah, if you
And
put
they're
up
asking
a
the
white
question-
image, it's like
Right.
different shades of yellow.
And they're asking, what do we replace this with? And that was kind of one of these conversations about this. So it does raise some questions as to the long-term use of LED. Is it going to do the same things? And I would say we're probably going to see that as it becomes more widespread, that you're going to have your showcase auditorium that you did with an LED panel, and 6 years from now, you've got 4 spots on it that people complain about because there's like a dimming section of that video wall.
So I won't name like exact names, but I've gotten some pricing back.
Steve,
right?
Mike,
from some different
Kip,
manufacturers, and
Ned, Mo, Tim.
I was shocked that you could get 135 single kind of the SKU solution, the LED, for like $35,000, right? Like that's which I was shocked by it.
I'm not
you,
looking at my prices
getting
while
them
you're
straight
talking.
from Canada or something?
No, this is the new
It's
pressure
China,
you're seeing.
Jimmy.
Yeah,
It's
it
China.
is a Chinese manufacturer
blaming
out there.
Canada
They're
today.
reputable. They're reputable.
Was it Leard?
No, and it's like, man, well, that's an intriguing number.
I don't know if it is or not. I mean, it is intriguing, but is it intriguing enough to where you open your pocketbooks for that? We can't.
Well, I'm not saying this exact scenario. I think we are going to see the market of this come in. I think we're going to see it where some edge case private institutions are going to say, we have all LED everything in our classrooms, or high resolution 32:9 everything, blah, blah, blah. You're going to start seeing this stuff, right?
Well,
and
that's
so,
a lot.
I know, but I'm just wondering, are you all thinking about it like a different takeaway? I'm just really curious on it. And kind of, Chris, I think you probably have, between you and Larry, you probably have the most experience in kind of deploying these in learning spaces.
Yeah, and so it's something that comes up in the right space, and this has come up several times with a showcase space. Even if it's an older space, but it's still a tent pole of the institution, this is one of our big rooms, or this is one of our active learning spaces, whatever it is, that question always comes up. Oh, could we do LED in here? And for the last 4 years in a row now, I've gone through the cost exercise of what would it be. And you're right, it is coming down, but it is still a big kick in the groin to most people looking at that when your number goes from $150,000 for a showcase auditorium to $450,000 or 350,000.
Let's back up a little bit. So people are on your campuses, Chris, I guess Larry too. Are people coming to you and say, "What is it going to take to put LED in here instead of projection?" Like they're suggesting that to you?
No, that's not
I have had
we want to do
that
a
at other
giant seamless
universities.
image.
Yeah.
Like I want
I
seamless
had
image.
the request, like we want jumbotron like things. Yeah,
That is so wild to me.
yeah, they want that until they
see what the cost is.
Yeah.
Right.
I have yet to deploy one. The sweet spot, I believe, what I'm going to end up doing first is to replace the panel walls like Chris has, and then instead of like the 6 whatever monitors that are teamed together, would be that 135-inch all-in-wonder one-box LED screen. Because that's going to be the thing that Market's going to drive it down to a row. Because that's already a, quote, showcase piece. Any bigger than that now, it's really gets strange.
Well, and at the same time, we're talking about these showcase spaces and how the market is changing. The market for projection has changed a ton too. Like 4K is actually an option. A really bright 4K isn't nearly as much as it used to be. Like we can make a showcase projection without some of the compromises.
True. Well, and also you can do the other method, because one of the complaints is once you get that bright with projection, you've got more light engine noise and more fan noise. Mm-hmm. But you can use the trick of, depending on the space and how much lighting control you have, you run it at the eco or the lesser brightness mode sort of thing, and you can step it way down. I mean, I was looking at projectors for an event space on campus the other day, and these are big, 12, 14, 15, 16,000 lumen projectors. And if you run them in eco mode and say, okay, now that 16,000 is a 12,000, it sits there at like 27 dB. And I'm like, that's pretty freaking quiet. Yeah. And it's already 15 feet off the ground. You're not going to hear that.
And you can use the whiteboard.
I think that was the
right on the whiteboard.
Where that was, I think we're going to see like this new renaissance of creative projection in learning spaces. And I think that's what I like magically at the same time I had these requests coming in for these like seamless solutions. All of a sudden I'm also getting requests for like short throw again. Right. So what's old is new again. Right. Or not necessarily short throw, but the experience that they're seeing, like, I want to do this. I want to do like lots of projection on this wall. We don't want to have shadows and all this stuff, but we're starting to rethink about, lots of pixel space on walls and the like, and like, how can we creatively do that? And it is a change to our infrastructure. Obviously we're invested in this infrastructure and standard projection, but getting the sense that the end users and clients are thinking about interacting with that digital content differently now than they were a few years ago, which I like. I like that this is changing that conversation. And like I said, I normally would never be looking at these solutions because it just wasn't standard, but here we are. It's now on the table to actually have an honest discussion about this.
Well, all of this, going back to cost, as new technologies get introduced, as they become popular and they're out there longer, the cost goes down. I remember I've spent, 6 months building reports trying to convince people to buy lasers over bulb projectors when lasers first came out, because they were so much more efficient for, the total cost of ownership, of support and everything else. But at the time when they first came out, they were more expensive. Then, a couple years passed, 3 years passed, whatever. Lasers, because they're more popular now than bulbs, market shifting around, are actually cheaper than buying a bulb projector. Spec for spec. So one can assume that as LEDs continue to be popular, those costs are going to keep going down and down and down. And maybe, just maybe, WKU can afford one day.
It's marketing at scale, Justin. You're exactly right. I mean, I have my experience with lamp to laser, because that in 2013, 14, 15, that was still this is going to cost you more. And you had to kind of go through that cost benefit analysis. If you want to know who was still buying lamp-based projectors in like 2019, it was University of Wyoming, because I have ones that are still under their initial warranty, and people are like, "Hey, our lamp's out again." I'm like, "What do you mean your lamp? What is happening here?
Your desk lamp?
Your time machine is stuck on 1846, and you have lamp. Is that sort of thing?" And I know at that point in 17, 18, 19, the cost delta was still there, but it was reduced to the point where it was maybe $300 or $400. And someone was then looking at a projector of, $2,500 versus $3,000 and not doing the math that, well, I'm still going to be putting a lamp in there every 2 years at $250 a pop, and like that stuff adds up.
And the person on the ladder.
And it's time.
And the person on the ladder, which comes out on my budget, so that's free to them. So you're welcome. It's that sort of thing that's a little frustrating. So you're right on the LED general cost to bring that down. I think we will see that. But it's one of those things and we'll get into here in a minute, but there's other ramifications to LEDs, both with power, with processing behind it, and with the infrastructure necessary to move, just simply say from projection to LED in an auditorium. It requires more than just this one's $60,000 and this one's $50,000.
So I want to ask you, so was there a unique use case that said, this is why? In your learning spaces, and outside of these were premium or like unique spaces, was there something that was being done that warranted that, yes, this is a good opportunity to do this? Outside of this impact in sales.
Possibly that requires it because it's
you just said you can't do LEDs, Justin.
Yeah.
Well, I have possible. It's possible. Maybe.
Okay.
Coming up.
There's a glimmer of hope.
The Dean's Conference Room for the new College of Business.
Oh, God.
It's a super long bowling alley. And they can't put projectors in there because there's chandeliers and all kinds of weird stuff hanging from the ceiling. And to get the image size you need.
That's where the sound goes.
Okay.
You can't put a 98-inch in there and get the image size you need.
That's the same constraint I have in a couple of venues.
It's really the bowling alley effect with the fancy lights and all the weird stuff. It's not, I can't even put a really nice projector with a snorkel lens on it and spend that kind of money. So I can't even do that. The $10,000 lens.
It's more than a projector.
Put the projector like a foot away to get a 130 plus inch. Anyways, so if we're going to get the image size that we need for that room, it's going to have to be direct view LED.
So some of the things that have floated across in use cases that I'm seeing that are the clients are perceiving the value being there. We're talking about high impact visualization of data set. Right, in spaces where we do public venues, like they keep saying they want to have a better version of that. We need giant, high brightness displays, seamless. Right, that's kind of the narrative that keeps getting thrown around for us here, and they are part remodel, part new construction of venues, but that's what I keep hearing, that they really want to have this, and they've seen these things, and they know they're out there, and they're bringing them back, and they're saying, let's talk about this. What's it mean? And part of it, I'm like, that's not really the thing. There's a need for higher resolutions and canvassing and things like that. That's not necessarily tied to this. There's other ways to accommodate that.
And that was going to be my comment, is if they want high detail, high resolution data sets, LED is not the way to go.
Right.
They're going to want to walk up to it and stand there pointing and looking at this stuff. And the LED, the reverse of kind of projection and LCD, has a closest viewer, at which point you see the individual pixels to the point where sometimes it makes stuff hard to see.
You need like a
which is why if you look at
0.001 pixel pitch.
Right, and they start talking about pixel pitches, and that was exactly what I was going to get into, is you have to, now there's a new number you have to think about, which does not, I'm sure you can make the argument, is not normally something you have to deal with in projection and LCD. So,
well, and that's been the conversation. Now I'm talking about what amount of square footage we don't want to think about as seating and or viewers being in here to make sure that it's
where
correct.
Are you not going to stand?
Where do you not want to see this very well? But I don't know, just interested. But let's get into some of those technical pieces, Chris, because I think you're right. There are additional awarenesses now we want to have when embarking down this kind of journey here. Yes, no? Am I wrong? Is there anything different you would want to take into account?
No, the pixel pitch is one of them. I mean, I mentioned a few other ones as far as infrastructure. Power is a big one, by the way. Power
it's a big one.
Becomes a concern. For those of you who are for 20 plus years have been very comfortable calling out, I need a single 110 AC duplex receptacle at this location for my projector. When you get into big dog projectors, this also comes up, but into I gotta be careful about this, LEDs as well. And they're getting better to the point where they, instead of needing, 220 or 240, they will say, well, we can run on two 110 circuits or something, and they can do that. But you got to look at the draw. You got to meet with your electrical engineers on campus. You got to make sure you test this stuff, because if you just wheel that in there, plug it in, it may work, and then it's going to power off when they fire up the lights and trip that circuit. So
works once.
And wait.
And if you've never had additional power pulled into some of your older buildings, oh my goodness.
That's the cheapest thing you can do, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
And the weight.
You're just adding another hole in the wall right there, right?
Concrete.
The structural support weight is a little bit, and it's not just hey, here's your horrible plaster wall, let's attach all these mounts to it. I mean, your structural support's got to change.
In the older units, there was a noise factor as well.
Yeah.
They had fans, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To go back to
look
the
at them.
pixel
So anybody
pitch,
in InfoComm this year, go ahead, Larry.
To go back to the pixel pitch, I know we said the closest viewer, but another thing to consider is if your instructor likes to walk to the screen and point to stuff, that eliminates that closest viewer. So if it's where they can go and look and be the closest viewer, you can't make that assumption that, okay, I can start people 14 feet back and be okay.
I like to bring up the advertising boards on the sides of sporting events, right? And when you're sitting back in the seats, they look pretty cool. And then they have a camera close up of the player standing right next to it, and you can literally see the thumb size holes in that image, and you're like, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
That's the cheap model. And them go, huh.
And for those of you who want the number real quick, the number is 11. The magic number is 11. So you take the pixel pitch, you multiply times 11, and it's weird because the pixel pitch is in millimeters. You multiply times 11, that gives you the distance in feet. So you flip it from metric to imperial, and this equation is terrible, and somewhere someone is now yelling at the car.
Yeah,
and it does
but it
not
works
work for
every
normal
time.
metric conversions.
But for this, it does.
But for
saying,
LED
it's
pixel
close.
pitches, 11 is the number that the manufacturers themselves use to identify at which distance you can no longer discern individual pixels. And Larry, to your point, the instructor who is in that teaching stage area, that first 10 or 12 feet of the classroom, so the students aren't affected. They can read it fine. They're up there 4 feet from it. They turn to point at something, and now they can't read it, which means they go into squinty mode, and then they walk backwards so they can read the text, which is not the look you want from
students.
Yeah.
I like it.
And that's
when
not what you want in your showcase learning space.
Yeah, all
Larry,
the
go ahead.
cameras in the room go bonkers because they can't focus on anything.
the IMAG stuff, I didn't even consider that.
Yeah.
God. don't
And
do
at the end of the day, like, yeah, it looks cool, but is the experience any different than what we've provided in the past? I mean, it costs a lot more right now. Maybe in the future it won't, but for right now, we're paying a lot more. And I can't think of a educational reason to do it, aside as what Justin said, the space dictates it has to be this way.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I can turn off lights in a classroom and get the contrast that we need. That so I mean,
automate that.
Yeah, I mean, direct view LED gets way better contrast, and but at the same time, is that a real problem we're trying to solve for in classrooms?
It's also really nice that the projection costs have gotten to a point where, to Chris's observation earlier, you can buy a 12,000 lumen unit, and it is expensive, but it is not what they used to be 10 years ago. I mean, a 12,000 lumen projector was upwards of $40,000
4 years ago.
Yeah, and now you can get one for almost $1 a lumen. Right?
It was actually about there. It ranges about $1 to $1.60, depending on how many lumens you are.
And most of them do not require extra power.
They're really efficient now.
And Mark, to your scenario, as far as that interactive artwork, signage, canvas sort of thing, this is where something like some of those projectors, either with a different type of lens or a short throw or something like that, do have some value to say, okay, we're going to rethink this. We're going to run this. This may be simpler on infrastructure, simpler on pathway, simpler on having to build out a structural wall or something, to say, okay, I just need a couple of AC receptacles along here, and I need to be able to get a cat cable to each one, and that's it. And you can do an entire wall of edge blended projection for probably less than the cost of your LED. Now, will it have that same, for lack of a better term, that same wow factor of somebody walking in? Probably not. Will it accomplish the same thing? I would argue it probably will at a far more economical cost. And another thing we haven't talked about, the support side of things, it's something that your team can work on right now, because if nothing else, one thing that we at Higher Ed know are projectors. LEDs, and they've gotten way more reliable and way easier to work on, but you still have to go through a training class or send your guys over to a manufacturer site or an integrator site for a couple of days to kind of get up to speed on how to work on these things, because it's not as simple as, yes, they snap off with magnets. Mm-hmm. Yes, they automatically talk to the panels around them. They know where they are. There are a lot of quirks to that, and especially if you're dealing with one that has a processor behind it, you need to have some engineering chops to get that going.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the processor.
Yeah.
A lot of these, it's not just a TV. It's not. There is an engine in there that you got to deal with.
Yeah. And so, curious, do any of you have these new multi-use XR style projects on the horizon where they're calling out this type of technology in that environment that's like the cave scenario, that you're going to have cameras and data and being able to sync and align refresh and a lot of that stuff?
That's a big fat no.
So we're starting to see things like that.
Well,
and that's
yes.
Yeah, in the old days that was called telesync, and you had a guy do nothing but that.
Yes, right. But it's so the people that are asking already have got their proposals put in from all the different vendors for the turnkey solution. So yes, no.
The people who were asking here didn't quite understand the budget implementation of that. And so I'm not sure it's going to go as far as we think.
Do any of you have like high performance computing capacity output centers on your campus?
Yes.
Yep. I'm in the building with it right now. It's like 60 feet from here.
Yeah. Where you're plumbing that to any type of space that a human is interacting with that data set and producing events with it?
It's plumbed right to the plumbing. No, in this sense, right now we're in the process of building out the high performance computing center and standing up the research department to actually run that. But those implications are coming down the road, and right now they are nebulous and ill-defined. Mm-hmm. And same with like the XR spaces. They're like, oh, that'd be cool. We should do this sort of thing. How? With things and stuff.
And that's where a lot of this is coming from. We have multiple venues that are kind of doing a lot of this similar piece of this. What it is newish to a lot of us. And it does involve AV, it does involve broadcast, and it involves high performance computing. And so it's marrying all of these things, and it's like the best of, right? Do the best of all of these different practices in a location. And the people who are dreaming it just want it to be turnkey one button studio, right? And so it's very unique to actually deliver that experience.
By the way, don't build one button studios.
No.
Topic for a separate show.
Yeah.
So, Mark, you had asked early on, is there any spaces that are not showcase spaces that we're doing this in, as far as looking at alternate display technologies and things? And I think we've all kind of said that barring some sort of physical, structural, architectural limitation in a teaching space, it's just not happening unless we're saying this is a showcase room, which is the exact scenario I have for two spaces on campus now, where it keeps coming up in the conversation. Is like, we just want to bring the tours through here.
Yeah. I'm
like, well, if you're going to do that, we can spend this money somewhere else.
So let's go to your normal room, right? And we said early on in the conversation, like the 85-inch display. Are you doing more of that in your small?
That's 85 is my standard for a conference room at this point. I'm starting at 85.
Okay.
Whoa.
In a conference room.
Yeah.
No matter the size?
Almost every conference
unless
room
it needs bigger.
Is an 86.
You're getting at least an 80. You're getting
really?
4 people in a conference room?
That's not a conference room. That's a cuddle space.
That's a cuddle space. Yeah.
Like a legit.
See, now we're getting a terminology.
It has a real table off the wall. 8 to 10 people.
I've got conference rooms with 4 to 6 people, table off the wall.
That's called an
like
office.
65s in.
I was waiting for you to say a 35-inch display.
35? No, we're 65.
They stapled a 15-inch laptop to the wall.
You know that little 14-inch laptop extender thing? We put that on the table.
75 is my sweet spot for conference rooms, just because our conference rooms are just, I guess, smaller for the most part.
Yeah. What's the seat count in your standard conference room housing an 85-inch display, Chris? Roughly.
Oh.
Seat count? I don't. It's in the 8 to 10 range. It's kind of like where they start. When they get bigger than that, we have to start talking bigger displays.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't differentiate between small, medium, and large conference rooms. Basically, I differentiate. But let me rephrase. I have conference rooms, and then I have large conference rooms, which means they need something else.
Unique boutique.
So anything below that is a conference room, whether you're seating, in Justin's case, 4 people. Hey, you luck out, got a 75 or an 85 in here. I don't care.
I I just same
But-
thing.
Yeah.
First row of the movie theater.
Why not? Hey, because if you look at that cost delta between a 75 and an 85 right now, it is not much.
Yeah, it's not much.
It's not, but
I do have spaces that
bitch at me more.
They want the collaborative technology, but they intentionally do not want giant screens. They're more of the huddle size.
That came up yesterday. Somebody wanted as big a screen as possible, and we were talking 100-inch direct single panel LCD. Because it had a low ceiling and there are other issues there. And so we talked about bottom of the display, which a lot of people don't think about. There's a display height that needs to be there both for top and bottom. But then they started talking about interactivity. And I was like, with a 98 or 100-inch interactive, you are going to have people who cannot reach the top. And what's at the top of every one of your screens? The menu bar. So you're going to open up these applications or your content or whatever, and you can't get to those buttons up there. So that's something and all of a sudden 3 people in the room, like to a man, they stopped and were like, ooh, how do we, and it's that challenge of, I want this as big as possible so people in the back of the room can see it, but I need to be able to touch it so it can, and it became a whole thing for a few minutes. There are multiple implications to touch-enabled displays once you get to that point.
So what do you do? Just give them an Apple TV and an iPad?
No.
There's your touch.
One of those little
Believe it or not,
sticks, like
the
elementary
solution
students
was
with the hand on the end of it.
The solution was 2 things. It was either a poking stick or a stool.
Okay.
And the
It works,
poking
I
stick
guess.
doesn't violate any kind of issues. A stool,
Fun for the
people
whole
don't want to
family.
stand
It
on.
depends how you
That's a
use the
safety
poking
hazard.
stick.
Hey, if you
So I have
decide
a
to
question
poke
for you
the bear,
guys.
that's your problem.
I have a question for you guys about the potential difference in the perceived difference in a conferencing space, conference room, whatever you want to call it, collaboration space, and a classroom. Does anybody else feel that projectors are not applicable for conferencing and collaboration spaces because it feels classroomish? It doesn't feel like a meeting space. It doesn't feel, and I'm going to use the wrong term here deliberately, but it doesn't feel like executive to have a projector in a conference room.
My biggest piece of that is I can never get my camera in the right location with a screen there.
I was
Correct.
about to say the exact same
That's
thing. You have this
that's
weird
my
camera
piece.
hanging out in the middle of the wall.
You know what I've done? Is I've
cut a hole in the
I've
screen.
added black drop or used the new wire lines from Daylight and then just put the camera on top if the room's
are
big
cool, by the
enough. I hate putting the camera on top of displays, but
Yeah.
You don't like that security camera view of it looking
Yeah,
down?
take
at
it down
everybody?
there.
yeah,
the
it's not
same.
great, but it's better than other options.
Where it's off to the side.
That and then just the traditional noise from projection has been problematic. But now it's not as bad as it was in the past. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get a lot of that request. I mean, it usually comes in. I say, well, you're usually in a room that can be accommodated with an 85 or whatever it is. So why bother?
I do have a couple of really big conference spaces. IT department itself has some, and those I can't get an adequately sized monitor.
Oh no, they're
And
certainly
so
out there.
those
you're
are
right.
stay in projection, and
Yep.
that's what they're used to. It's okay.
So once that conference room gets up into that 16, 20, 22, see, because I have a few of those. Yeah, it's projection and tough.
Yeah.
And sometimes though, if you upsell the projection and you do some things, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, that's just as good.
What I like to do in those situations is do a fixed screen and thin frame. It makes it look like a fixed display. It looks a little bit better.
And replace it
I
every couple of
really-
years when somebody writes on it.
personally
Held up,
really,
held up. They
really
don't write
love
on
that
it.
idea, except, God damn it, I keep replacing fabric because I don't know what it is about those screens, but everybody feels like they need to write on it.
See,
Everybody.
we don't
I'm like,
put
what is
whiteboards
wrong
in
with you?
conference rooms, so nobody writes on stuff in conference rooms.
Wait,
That's
I
only
know.
in classrooms.
You don't put whiteboards in conference rooms? That's the whole
man,
point of a
that's
conference
like
room.
our growing segment is like whiteboard and whiteboard cameras in collaboration and
No,
conference rooms.
whiteboards
That's
are
like a
in
whole thing.
classrooms.
Wow.
Sometimes front and
Whiteboard-
center.
Whiteboards,
Yeah.
marker boards, glass boards, blackboards, whatever you want. I don't care. The writable surface should be every possible wall surface you can cover.
Yep.
I don't care.
Well,
And the
apparently
only- so
we're
let
a
me
fixed
back
frame
up.
screen.
50% of the wall
Yeah.
should be writable surfaces, and the other 50% should be acoustic paneling. There you go. I just
There it
solved
is.
so many of your problems. right
Carpet.
there.
Who needs bookcases?
It's all on iPads these days.
Who reads books? Jeez.
What's this
Not you,
book?
Chris.
It's acoustic material is what it is.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah. I was in a room yesterday that had 3 walls. It has floor-to-ceiling stacks with books.
It only had
And they were-
3
they-
walls. It's called a lean-to.
It was a carport. They had
Jesus
truck-
Christ, what kind of shit are you building in Wyoming?
It's where you keep the horses.
Oh, okay.
Future,
I got
man.
it.
It's the future out there.
But they had that, and they were asking,
Called a
like, should we
stable.
think about getting rid of these books? I'm like, no. First of all, they look cool doing this, and secondly, acoustically, this is awesome. So,
Sure. Okay.
Anyway, just
There was my 3-wall joke for the day.
perfect.
So, anything else about big displays in rooms?
Yeah. Did we solve everything here? So
Yeah, I don't think
it sounds
we
like we're
solved
not doing
anything, but
LEDs except in oddball scenarios. Projection still most economical way to do it, and we all like 85-inch displays and below.
That's what I heard.
Okay. What's the small? Here's a question for you. Let's go reverse, just for the sake of argument. What's the smallest display we put in a space?
10-inch.
None.
That's not a touch
Justin,
panel.
not your weird signage. What do you call it? Your
A space
scheduling
is one of
panels.
our door signs, so that's our door sign stand, 10 or 12
in a
inch.
presentation.
Oh.
Space.
75 is about as small
Probably
as I'll order.
65.
Yeah.
65 for us.
In the huddle space kind of scenario, it is that 55 to 60.
Are you talking teaching, learning,
take that
or
back.
conference, collaboration, huddle, cuddle?
And if it was an active learning spot at the end of the little bullet tables,
43.
it depends
Yeah.
on how many seats are on the end of that bullet table and how it's set up,
26.
but it's usually around the 50-something.
Yeah,
Now, that
55,
said-
50s in the like small groups of students huddled around in the active learning environments.
Right, and that's kind of a different scenario. But you're right, and there are times for a small display. So, yeah.
They're out there.
I guess the next challenge is, instead of doing a big display next time, can we do a video wall of tiny displays?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Be great.
It's called computer monitors.
Yeah, that's a thing.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. How many 21-inch displays can I put on this wall?
Yeah.
Good
All
grief.
of them,
All right,
CRT.
All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to yell about digital signage.
Ooh, signage.
As many of you know, the Super Friends have always been better received when we have more input from you. So, here's your chance. Send us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and get involved with the show. We're looking for some topics to discuss, some fellow nerds to talk to, or just general AV awesomeness to brag about. But remember, we'll probably steal your ideas. And I suppose we'd take some criticism, but that wouldn't be very nice. Anyway, drop us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and find out how quickly we ask you to join this nonsense.
All right, digital signage. So I think it's something we all deal with on campus in one way, shape, or form or another. So I guess my thinking on this is, who manages what? I mean, who's responsible for it on your campus? I'm happy to start, but is that something our teams own, or is there some other group in IT? Is it completely a free for all and people just do what they want?
I want to turn it back a little bit here and say,
You want to go back to large displays?
No. In what would be success on a campus with digital signage? Like, what does that actually look like?
Marketing and communications owns all content.
Okay.
I'd be happy if the displays were on and there weren't cables hanging down below them.
Okay, so it's displays are on and functioning with fresh content.
All departments are forced to use the campus standard.
So it's a standard. Okay.
Sustainable and supportable.
I think a lot, and this was a discussion we had, a couple of weeks ago, at a Panasonic event was, what would make digital signage on the surface for most of us, fine, whatever, it's easy. It is supportable. It is replicatable. It is, for the most part, simple, except the last bit. And nobody wants to own content. Nobody wants to own creation. Nobody wants to own, but everybody wants a say in it, but nobody wants to do it. And for me, I think it logically falls within marketing communications owns everything else. Just hire the signage czar and funnel everybody to them. And you probably find out that simple and done. You get 2 student workers out of the graphic design thing, and you could cover a giant university with very little cost and headache, but nobody wants to do it.
No, because
And sell advertising,
they're not
for
looking
God's
at it that
sakes.
way.
I mean,
That's not how
they
they
could
look at
make
it.
revenue on these things.
Selling advertising is a problem for
That's
us.
a
Like,
lot
of
there's
schools
bylaws
won't.
and
Yeah.
we can't
But
do that.
Marketing, communication, and advertising all have all the legalese already figured out. There is no transversal of red tape because they already know what it is.
Yeah,
That's
but
the
it's
thing.
not their medium of choice. They want to put out
Right.
like public-facing web content and or
on TikTok.
Yeah, whatever that may be. So we've actually, through fits and starts of this, embarked on a more formalized digital signage rollout here. For years, it's been really fragmented. Everybody does their own thing. And it's always the project. Oh, it's a capital project, and we got some displays out there, and blah, blah, blah. Our office manager can sneaker net this PowerPoint over there and plug it in and USB, blah, blah. A lot of that. Like, there's gobs of that across campus. I'm sure everybody listening has a version of that somewhere. And Chris, you may or may not have put some slides together on some pieces that had some holiday-type display on there.
The term is digital booby trap.
Yes, and that stuff ran for years.
7 years.
Perfectly well, right? And so,
hey, don't Google that. Don't Google
right. And so
digital
now
booby trap.
There is some acknowledgement from administrative level. Like, it would be nice to have some common branding across the board. And so how do we get there? How do we do that? Everybody wants to start, well, we're just going to put some TVs up there. And it's like, well, no. We're not going to just put some TVs up there. We're going to talk about some displays. What does it mean? Cycle that will last, can be on for up to 24 hours a day. But then we start to get into the minutia. What's the player? What's the service? Right? Because everybody has their own little departments, and we have lots of these different VLANs. So I can't have everybody connecting directly to these appliances, which means they need to have some type of cloud hosted service on them, right? So they can get to them. And so we've actually looked at a couple of different variants and do have some already rolled out on campus. We've populated with basic branding, but then we've stopped at that point. We are not responsible for your content, like you've said. Nobody wants to own that. And we don't have the bandwidth to take on that level. We'll own the physical stuff in the place, plummet accordingly, tell you the infrastructure to get there, get you started, and give you the logins to your appliance. And that's where we stop at that point. What are you doing? What's your version of it, Justin? What do you got?
We've got a pretty good setup. I like it. It's actually something I feel we do fairly well at Western, so it's, hard to find those things sometimes, but we've got it set up to where the AV team designs the infrastructure. So that's us kind of coming up with the display size, doing the needs analysis, making sure the infrastructure will support it, making sure it's within ADA if it's touch or not, things like that. Then we have our other groups inside of IT, such as systems and other people that deal with the back end and all of that nonsense. And as far as deployments of players and managing support tickets and all of that, that's our AV support group. But the clients or the marketing group owns the content. And the way we have it set up, we have a university, we call it the university-wide channel. And that's marketing's responsibility to update fresh content all the time. And every player, when we deploy, gets that automatically. And the client that wanted, like if it's biology or chemistry or whatever it is, if they wanted that sign, they are allowed to change that content on their own. And somehow marketing polices that to some degree. I'm not exactly sure. We provide training on how to use the software, but we don't provide training on how to create good content. And what we normally see is year one, the content's, it's okay. It kind of looks like PowerPoint. Year 2, 3, and 4, it gets quite a bit better quickly. The content's more robust. It changes quite often. And for whatever reason, when we deploy these signs, because there is some ongoing cost to them for support, they have to pay maintenance fees for software. IT handles that on the back end, and then people pay us their monthly fees or whatever. So I think by having those fees in place, forces them to keep the content fresh. If they stop paying those, we just turn the sign off, and now it's black and it's kind of an eyesore. And for the door scheduler signs, it's the same thing. It's the same exact setup. It's just digital signage. So that's how we handle it. It's pretty easy.
We do have an annual fee associated with ours as well.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the takeaways. We felt like if somebody had to acknowledge that on their budget, then they would be more willing to take ownership of it.
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
So it's worked out.
Then you don't get that stagnation piece of it.
Yep.
Okay, so doesn't sound like we're too far off from where you are. Okay. Well, what about you, Larry?
So we have three different aspects to it. So there's the hardware side, which is my team does that. The software and licensing side is another team down the hall. They handle that, though we work very closely together on this stuff. The content is up to the department, the owner, whoever it is. And as an example, one of the things that was requested on a recent project we did where we refreshed a lot of they did furniture, they did finishings, they did technology, all sorts of stuff in the president's suite. So boardroom, conference room, big spaces. They wanted some new digital signage in there. So as people came in, this is, as they're bringing in VIPs, this is the first thing they sort of see. And it was somewhat amusing to me that we pointed out early on who was responsible for the different aspects of this. And we stood up the display and got it set up, whatever. And that same static logo was on there for like 6 weeks. And they started asking questions as to like, who's going to update this? Why is this not changed? What's going on here? And we kept referring back to the old emails that show who is responsible for it. And kind of on their behalf, we reached out to campus marketing to say, you might want to get involved in this project based on who the client is to ensure that they have fresh content and things going, because they will be highly visible. And it's been a bit of a challenge for us to get the marketing group involved in this, because we would love to have them more involved in the signage so that they own the look and feel of that, they own the standards, etc. But it's not something that has happened to this point at the level I would like to see it. Okay. But as far as the hardware, that's me. And then, if I can make picture and sound on it, then we're done. We walk away.
Well, how are you going to fix that problem, Chris? You got an idea of how to get that buy-in changed?
Yes. So we're going to work it through back channels, because my director and the director of marketing are friends.
Okay.
And he's kind of needling his friend, who's now needling his staff to get. And so it will come to a head at some point. We'll have a conversation about how this works. The good news is it won't affect anything I'm doing, because that's all on the software side of things. And we did roll out a campus-wide standard. So it was wild, wild west out here for a few years, and people running PowerPoint on thumb drives in the back of TVs and things. And, and we finally said, look, if you're going to have displays on campus, you have to keep it updated. If you have a PC or something back there, great. We can repurpose that as a signage player. If not, then here's a little bright sign player you can get for $320 or something like that. So it's relatively affordable. And that, I think, was one of the things that helped us get buy-in across campus was, yes, you have to buy this piece of hardware. And yes, there's a recurring annual fee for this. But for that, you get an easy to access cloud-based, just log in, anyone can set up their stuff and you can share things back and forth. And so there were benefits to that, which did all exist under the previous systems that were in place. But talk about clunky to use.
Do any of you do like the interactive, like, come up to our building, here's where everybody's located, it's a map?
Wayfinding?
People always ask for that. You do that? That's part of your system?
We do.
Okay.
We did it, we've done it once in our student center.
Who's designing that?
That was about it.
Who does it?
I'm sorry?
Somebody who doesn't work there
Who does the actual layout and design and upkeep of that?
They have some pretty good people in the, I don't know, it's some kind of marketing group within the student center, and they hire students, and that shit looks good. It really does. But the reason why we don't do it a whole lot is, one, not everybody has good content creators, and two, it's pretty expensive when you start considering all the ADA factors and everything that you have to make sure infrastructure wise. So that it's just not very popular because of mainly cost.
That's the one that always comes in on a building project.
They always want to do
an interactive directory over here, and it's like, just don't need that. Is there? Can I talk you out of needing that?
We had one that was put in 10 years ago, and they were the ones turned sideways. You walk in the lobby, this is where everybody is, and this is their offices. You know how many times that's been changed? Zero. The building's 10 years old. So hell no. Like, how many, you got to think how many people have changed or quit. Right, and so it just sits there. So
not in that building.
So it's more like a cemetery. These are all people who used to work in this building.
These are the people who originally worked in this.
It's like a Hall of Fame now.
A memorial.
Do you flip it over now? It's an in memoriam.
Map of the stars.
Signage.
This is where Justin used to sit.
You just take a Sharpie and cross them out as they leave.
Yeah, exactly. But again, this building is off campus. It's our nursing building, and the building's not owned by WKU, but in the student center where they take tours and everybody comes to visit, it's very visible. That's why that content gets refreshed more often.
Yes, It comes up in almost every big project, and we talk them out of it with almost every big project, and it's gotten easier since 2020 because nobody wants to touch anything.
Yeah, the no touch.
Yeah.
No touch signage.
You just could use a poking stick. That's fine.
A marker.
It's got to just write your name in here. Oh, that's what you do. Next time you do that, you just leave the spaces blank with a long thing, and they can write their name in.
Just take a label maker up there and.
So where do you get these poking sticks? Do you just Google poking stick, or do you just get them on Amazon, or does Daylight make a part?
Your
like poking sticks?
They're little foam finger poking sticks. The elementary schools across the world have them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Like the ones you see in the stadiums, like I'm number one.
It's exactly
poking
They're on the end of a
finger
stick.
number one.
Like a wooden stick?
I'm
Is it
not
metal?
kidding. I probably have 4 of them.
Is
in
it
the house
retractable? Can you retract them?
Yeah, some of them are.
Retractable foam finger.
Man, I need to give me one of these.
All right. Well, signage. I guess it's a thing.
Don't do it. Wait, sorry.
Don't touch it.
Do it right.
Without a foam finger.
Well, we've managed to ruin yet another episode of AV Super Friends Off the Rails. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. If you complain loud enough, we might just invite you on the show.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV Super Friends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients. Psst, hey, come here a minute. You want to hang out with the AV Super Friends more often? Like every day? At odd hours? Well, we're not going to do that. That's weird. Why would you want to do that? However, we are hosting our own Discord server, and we're inviting you to join. And to keep things exclusive to AVSF supporters and listeners, we're going to make you jump through a single hoop to get there. Here's how. You have to request an invite. That's it. Okay, how do you do that? Well, you can submit a message via the contact form on our website, avsuperfriends.com. Or you can email us, mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. Or you can DM us on Twitter, @avsuperfriends. Or you can send us a message on LinkedIn. Yes, it's AV Super Friends. Or you can shout really, really loud. That might not work. But keep trying anyway. You're going to get locked up if you do that. Or you can drive past AVSF World Headquarters in lovely, scenic Centralia, Pennsylvania, and throw a rock through our window. Just write your name on it. Also keep shouting. Or send a self-addressed stamped envelope to AVSF Discord, P.O. Box 169, Egmouth, Minnesota Nuts, 0042. I'm not sure about that last one. It sounds fake. So there you go. We want you to join our Discord server. It's our little corner of the internet to share ideas, ask questions, brainstorm, complain about industry trends, or name and shame people, products, and organizations. And as an added bonus, if you act today, you'll receive one of Justin's dogs. He's got like 7 of them. Also, you'll get access to live broadcasts of our audio-only recording sessions. Seriously, you'll get to listen to us before the show is published as a polished and edited MP3. So what are you waiting for? Join us now.